Hey there folks, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and today we're approaching Tactical Tuesday with linear modes in Battlefield 5. Now, this is something that seems quite relevant considering the return of Rush, but linear modes in general in Battlefield are something that's existed for quite a long time, and today I want to talk about how you can tackle linear modes in any given Battlefield, not just 5, and really in general give you the tools you need in order to be victorious on most occasions. Now, I'm going to be doing this on both the defensive and offensive side, and on the offensive side in particular, there won't be a lot of editing because it's kind of going to get to where my point is at. There's no point me just showing you all the kills I get and blah blah blah. I really need you to understand how it is that I attack the objectives, so it's going to be completely uncut. This video today is brought to you by Aorus Gaming. Feel free to check out their products in the description below. They run everything that's in my PC, the motherboard, the RAM, and I highly recommend them if you're looking for PC components, peripherals, or gaming monitors. Lots of great stuff, so check it out in the link in the description below. So to begin with, let's look at defending in linear modes, and this could be anything from breakthrough, rush, or front lines, or anything in between that happens to be rotated in and out of Battlefield. Now, defending in linear modes is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see players make, and it's the sit-back antics that really get people destroyed in this game. Now, be it rush, breakthrough, or anything in between, what typical players in Battlefield will do is they'll sit back on the objectives themselves as the game almost implies to do, and with that, there's no disruption of flow of gameplay. Now, when attackers are attacking a defending objective, the most successful way of doing so is overwhelming it. If you have too many people on one objective, it doesn't matter whether they're coming at you straight on, from the side, or any flanking route in between, ultimately they will surround and overwhelm the objective point itself. This happens quite commonly in most linear game modes because there are only one or two things to focus on, as opposed to things like Conquest where there are hundreds of objectives that you could potentially be going for. Now, the biggest way to counteract this is by disrupting flow of gameplay. Disrupting flow of gameplay simply means that, almost as a sacrificial lamb kind of way, you're going to be the person that's going to take out enemies or make them think twice. And that delay, that making them think twice, will likely give your teammates in the objectives that most of them will do, most of them will just sit there, it gives them the ability to take out opponents because there isn't an overwhelming force. Now, the more the flow of gameplay between the attacking spawn and the defensive objective is not disrupted, the more it will be overwhelmed. So, for example, you'll see in some of this gameplay here when I'm defending, I tend to jump up in their face. I'm more or less on the borderline of being out of bounds, and all I'm doing is taking out an opponent here or there. And when I've done that, people think that I'm the new target. I am the new objective because people are like, hold up, I can't get out of spawn, or hold up, there's somebody right behind me. People will always think twice. They'll look backwards, and when they're looking backwards, they're not looking forward at the defending objective. And on Rush in particular, I found lots of people really wanted to try and take care of me. You know, I became the focus of attention with some teammates who decided to push with me because they felt like that was the first hurdle. You'll notice in these linear game modes that people don't ignore players. They will attack objectives sequentially. They'll take out every single threat in their way until they reach the objective. So the more you put threats in their way before the objective, the longer it's going to take them to get there. And if you can take out multiple enemies, then ultimately there's not going to be a lot of people left to attack the objective, but more importantly, there won't be enough people left to overwhelm the objective. And that's how a linear game mode can very easily collapse when you get one defensive team who just sits on the objective, because if you just sit there and wait, eventually the full 32 player force is going to overwhelm you, or the full 16 or however many players it's going to be. Eventually there will be as much of them as there is of you, and things like reinforcements, things like sandbags, and things like positions to camp in will only get you so far. If lots of people are sitting on an objective, all it takes is one well-placed grenade to take out the reinforcements in the area, to take out that guy who's sat in a corner with an LMG who thinks he's going to kill loads and loads of people, or to take out that one guy who's sitting in a really strange location. I found particularly on Devastation, people use the top layers of the map to try and defend the first two MCOMs, and whilst there is a peculiar location, the second you kill one person, everybody knows where you are. And finally, for defending at least, when things do get hot and there are lots of people on the location area, you will of course have to sit on the objective. You will have to take out the enemies in proximity. But what I really highly recommend when you're doing this is being fully aware that as you're approaching this objective and as you're taking out enemies, more people are coming. Don't just think, yep, got rid of the guys on the MCOM, that's it. Once you take out those guys, start pushing forward. And if you have to sit on objectives, make sure you're reviving people. The more people you have, the more impactful you'll be. Moving on to the attacking side now, and the attacking side, well, is kind of what you'd expect it to be really. It's death. It is repeated death over and over and over again, and there really is no getting around it. And when attacking, I really recommend using the medic class, and the reason I say this is purely down to the fact that you're just going to get shot a lot, and more importantly, smoke grenades are a huge part of this, and having the smoke launcher in particular will allow you to cover lots of spaces of land. Now let's go over attacking, and attacking on linear modes is relatively simplistic because, well, like I mentioned, it is a lot of dying, but you will have to push objectives pretty heavily, and there's a couple of things that I want to mention. Number one, there are obvious lanes. Now if you look at the minimap, you can see that there are going to be 3 or 4 obvious lanes into the objectives that you're looking for, some of which will be more occupied than others. And it's really down to you to choose the most obscure route possible in order to make an impact. Now, there's no point fighting enemies if you're not near the objective. If you can get closer and attack people, sure, but for the most part, you really need to be pressing the actual location itself. I typically do this by using obscure routes and choosing the lanes that are the least occupied, although sometimes that isn't an option, and usually as well a high combination of smoke grenades. You know, it's such a simple thing that makes a world's worth of difference, because when you're attacking in this game, you need to understand that it's effectively 2 walls of people looking at each other. If you were to visualize it as a cone, the attackers would be looking straight at you and the defenders would be looking straight at the attackers, and because it's a linear game mode, there will always be a wall of people. It's more about whether or not that wall of people is going to be pushed back further enough that you can attack the objective successfully. Now once you've finally made it to the objective, be it through lots of deaths, smoke grenades and everything in between, I really do recommend obstructing gameplay. Like I've mentioned before in the previous defensive section, it's more about the overwhelming force of players than anything else when it comes to any given linear objective. And in this scenario, it's actually worth taking a high press. Once you've planted the bomb on the objective, don't stop there and don't just sit around it, because there will always be teammates who'll do that for you. Be the person who gets up in their face, push their spawn, and push them back as hard as you can. You can see in some of the examples of gameplay today, there's moments where I literally just sit in a house and spray down enemies running towards the objective. And that disruption buff made me a target, but more importantly, bought the objective adequate time in order for it to detonate without it being a problem. And again, you are going to die a lot. The reason I haven't really edited much of this second half of gameplay is purely down to the fact that there is just a simple acceptance that once you take on an attacking role, it's going to be a lot of grinding, and it's going to be lots of you going down and lots of smoke grenades and you having to make sacrifices, because nobody else simply in your team is going to do it for you. Nobody else is going to push the high line, nobody else is going to throw down the smoke grenades, and nobody else is going to make the critical plants on objectives that you need to make. And truth be told, sometimes it does feel like in Battlefield that you need to do it all by yourself, because having minimal trust in your teammates, unless they're people you're playing with, is simply the basic norm. Like, you can't rely on blueberries to do things, because the likelihood is that they won't, and unless it's somebody you know or somebody you play with, you really need to push and make the objective differences yourself. And I think you can see in both halves of these gameplay that my disruptive playstyle and the way I pushed objectives was certainly beneficial to that of the overall flow of the team. Now, I'm not saying that what I did purely alone was the reason we won the game, or la-di-da, or however you want to perceive it, but what I am saying is that without my efforts to disrupt the flow of gameplay, I don't think we would have lasted as long as we did defending some objectives, and I don't think other objectives necessarily would have had the necessary time they needed in order to detonate. And it's that disruption. The average Battlefield player is just going to look at the first problem in front of them. They won't not engage somebody. In other shooters, especially more tactical ones, sometimes it actually makes sense not to shoot a person, but in Battlefield, that rarely happens. People will always go for what's in front of them, and if you can be what's in front of them and be better than the people opposite you, then you're always guaranteed success, whether it's disrupting enemies defending an objective, or it's disrupting enemies attacking an objective. You'll simply have the upper hand because you've taken a high press and a high line. So troops, that's about it from me today in the Tactical Brit in terms of what it's like in a linear mode. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below, and I really appreciate you guys enjoying this video and leaving likes, comments, thumbs up, everything in between, subscriptions. You know, it's not always about the numbers, but it's really great to see people engage with your content, and it's something that I personally value very highly. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, and feel free to check out some of the other content on the channel. There's lots coming. We've done some Modern Warfare recently. That's probably going to continue. We're going to be doing some squad soon as well. Who knows? We might even dabble back into the days of Rainbow Six. It's all out on the table to be seen. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon in another video.